That's why I'm here today. So what I want to talk about here, since obviously you don't need me to teach you about raga, I would be highly inadequate to do that, especially knowing who you have an opportunity to study with. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Western music and how we look and how we look at things, and maybe get you guys to play in a slightly different way than you might otherwise think. And I know some of you are maybe beginning students, but I know some of you are rather advanced students. So the big difference, I think you know, between Western music and Indian classical music is that we change surs, sometimes as quickly as each beat. And we have to feel comfortable on our instruments to move in what we call chromatic ways. And I think you know that chromatic means every half step, every semitone. And we learn to play every scale from every pitch, imagining that every pitch can be sa. And we do that in various patterns as well. And in what we call inversions. So if I'm playing what's called a major triad, does everybody know what that term means? A major triad is, the first is sa, ga, pa. So that's called a major triad in first inversion, or root position. We use the word root to denote sa. We also call it the tonic. These are all synonyms. So root, first, one, we use numbers a lot when we're talking, especially since we might be changing keys. We'd say it goes from a 1 chord to a 4 chord to a 5 chord to back to a 1. So those numbers would be the same no matter what key we're playing in. So in root position, do you have your D flutes with you? Why don't you take out your D flutes for a minute? And whenever I hear Hari G pick up his flute, he's always going. He's always checking the intonation of sa and pa, because as we know, those are the never-changing notes in the Indian scale. In the West, we do think of, they do alter pa. There'll be a sharp pa or a flat pa. Here, that would be a komal da or a tivra ma, but different system. So, root position triad from sa. Again. Okay, now let's go down a whole step. Okay, so in Sargam, now these notes are not unfamiliar. I'm not doing anything tricky or evil. So this would be, what note would you start on? If Sa is here, what is the first note? And relative to Sa, it's a what? Right. Como ni re ma re. So let's try that slowly, just like as I do it. Listen. Again. Okay, so what we need to do now is visualize those as two distinct major triads. You understand that if ni was called sa, it would still be going sa ga pa, right? Ni. So and the reason this is so is because of the intervals. A major triad has a major third, sa ga. That's what we call a major third because it has it's got what, four? It's got 4 half steps, right? That's what we call a major third in the West. And between ga and pa, that's the same relationship as sa and como ga. It's a minor third. All of our major triads are structured the same way. Ga pa. Three half steps. Sa re re ga ga. So, and that's the same if we go from ni re ma. Okay, so that's not as important. I mean, it's not essential to what I'm going to show you, but it's good to know that we've got. Okay. So the next step, though, is then to look at what we call the inversions of these triads. So if we just look at the sa triad or the 1 triad, ga pa sa. Everybody play that? That's what we call the first inversion of a major triad. That means we were just taking it, starting from the next note up. Okay, and so logically, the next inversion starts on what note? Correct, pa. And then that brings us back to what? What's sa? And so that's all of the ascending. That's all the ascending inversions of the, in this case, the D major triad, the Sa major triad. Okay? And we can do the same thing descending. If we start on a high Pa, and then on Ga, okay, so we've covered the D major triad. Now we go down to Komal Ni. We've got another major triad that we're looking at. We've also got the inversions of that triad. So starting on Ni, and then the first inversion starts on what note? Re. Then Re. Then the next starts on Ma. And then up to Ni again. And then is the high Ni available? Can you do that? And then Ma. And then from Re, from Ni, okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm going to take these two triads, as they're called, and mix them together. So Re, and let's see. I'll do it without the drone for now if we want. So. So do you see that I'm just taking these triads and interlacing them? I'm doing, instead of just going, I mean, maybe we should start just by going. I'm starting on Ni, Ni, Re, Ma. Okay? So let's go straight up alternating triads. So listen one time, it'll sound like this. So what you're hoping, one of the things you're hoping to get to is to actually, I mean, for me, I have a visual image of almost like a set of stairs that you're walking up, and you're just skipping the stairs, then you're kind of coming back down and skipping the next stairs. Now, of course, because I've been doing this for years, I'm able to hear it and kind of see some sort of image of it in my mind. Now, these notes are very much within scale that you're familiar with, right? Sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, which is what? It's the Kamaj Tat, right? Does anybody have an iPhone? No. Is there a? We can put on the drone, which might just help. Tanpura. Because what's interesting with something like this, if we play the drone here, you're going to be playing a Kalyan Tat. If we play the drone here, you're going to be playing the Kamaj. Everybody tune their iPhones to It's funny, you know, as a young person studying Indian music, really tuning the tambura is one of the great lessons, and you learn pretty much nothing turning on an iPhone, because you hear the harmonics. When you tune the tambura, you hear the naturally occurring I want to be able to hear you better than this allows me. So, let's do it nice and slowly. Again. So coming down from Sa. Again from Sa down. And from the bottom. Okay, and so then you can make it a little fancier. See if we can just do that now. So just that much. So where am I going? Sa. What's the next note? Sa pa sa ga re. Just that much. Hold on. Together. 1, 2, 3. Again. Oh, good. Go ahead. Together. 1, 2, 3. So we're just using D major triad and C major triad. So you guys are getting it. 1, 2, 3. You should turn down though. You're louder than the rest of the entire class. Yeah. So let's take it up a little higher. See if we can. So. Ba, sa, ga, re is the last one. Okay, together again. Right, so that we're just looking at alternating major. Huh?
I'm just taking the notes.
Taking the note?
The notes that you're taking. Notes.
Yes. Yes. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba ba ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. No, ba. Okay, yes. 1, 2, 3. And it's funny, we have there's an old jazz song that goes, I look at you and suddenly something in your eyes I see soon begins bewitching me. Then it changes after that, but it's built, it's called, it's that old devil moon that you stole from the skies, from like the 1940s or 1950s. But it's built on that triad structure. So let's just keep working with it a little bit. 3, 1, 2, 3. So how many notes are we playing all together? How many different notes do we have in this pattern? Come on. Come on. 6. 6. What note of that Kamajtat is not there? Huh? We're playing, which notes are we playing? We're playing Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, and Ni. So Da is not in there. We're playing, if we took those triads and put them all in a row, we'd get. Right? No. Let's just play that as a scale. 2, 3. So, now I'm sure somewhere in the Melakarta system of the South, that's probably a raga, and it may be here in the North also, where you're playing like Kamaj but without any da, without any david. But if I made that david komal, what raga would we have? So mixing the scale and the triads, you can suddenly add quite a bit of color and movement to your improvisational lines, like what I just did. So it gives you a little bit of a launching off place. So that last thing that I just played is also a triad, but instead of going sa, ga, pa, I'm going sa, ga, como, pa. Now that's what we call an augmented triad, which is a major third between sa and ga, as it was before. 4 half steps, but it's also a major third between ga and como da. And interestingly, it's also a major third between como da and sa, again from the top. So it's a perfectly symmetrical triad, which is a very interesting thing. So So these triads are big building blocks of melody. So we could do something like adding to that. If we were in, we can do it if I put the shuddha da back in, kept the komal ni, but added a tivra ma instead of a regular ma. This man's on the case. Vachaspati. And what that does is it gives us, again, the major triad, and it gives us an augmented triad, but instead of from sa, it's from ni. So you get another one of these symmetrical augmented. You also, if I'm not mistaken, you can also play a major triad from re. So you get this sound. Let's just try that really slowly. So we're going to go sa ga pa ga sa re ma da ma re. So we can build that same, shall we say, ladder of triads. But we've got to get the drone up or we're going to sound like we're in a different... So starting on Punch'em, down low. Let's play it a little higher up, so it's just a little easier to hear. Okay. And what's interesting, if you're playing within this within these triadic structures, it's pretty easy to create some attractive harmonies. So if you play what we just played. Okay, so do you hear what I'm doing? I'm playing the same pattern, but starting, in this case, on the inversion one iteration lower. So if he's starting on sa, ga, I'm starting on pa. And it just creates, kind of an immediately attractive harmony, because we're staying within that triadic structure. So I wonder if we can get the group playing in harmony. So this side of the room, play sa. Well, let's all together look at the harmony. Together, let's look at the pa. pa sa ga da re ma da sa ga pa da pa re. Again. Okay, you guys play that. I'm going to play the top part. 1, 2, ready, and. Okay, so you have to watch your pitch, though. Some of you are getting a little bass sore on this. And just one little exercise that I like to do to lock in pitch is, let's say we're playing in this. I mean, I do this chromatically, which is probably a little awkward on the bansuri. But if we did it within this Vachaspati thing, just go. So we relate each pitch to sa. We really hear what that distance is. 3, 4. Sorry, I'm wrong. 3 and 4. Again. And then reverse. Again. Let's look at that knee, please. Okay, so now I've switched back to the major triad and the augmented. And that's, I think for everybody, that note, when that tivra ma comes in, it's just like, it's very exciting. Jazz musicians love the interval of what we call it either a sharp 4 or a flat 5th. And we have a name that covers both, which is called tritone. Has anybody heard that term? And what's distinctive about the tritone in any system is that it divides the octave perfectly in half, right? You've got the same number of... It's the halfway point. And in another class, it's a super important interval in the structuring of what we call dominant 7th chords. It's the relationship between the 7 between the third and the flat 7. So it's how in Western harmony, it's one of the ways we lead from one chord to the next. If I turn off the drone for a second, we get this kind of, sorry. I don't, these, so in my right hand are all these tritones, and I can do all sorts of harmonic movements with my left hand, and that tritone structure creates this something that I'll tell you at another time. But it's this great relation, you know. Those are all tritones, which are very potent in Western music at describing harmonic motion from, especially around, we have this whole thing called the cycle of fourths or the cycle of fifths, around which are keys. You know, you've heard the term, it's in the key of C major, it's in the key of F major, it's in the key of B flat. This wheel of keys happens in Western music where in the key of C there are no sharps or flats. In the key of F, there's 1 flat. In the key of B flat, there are 2 flats. In E flat, 3 flats. So we keep either adding a flat as we go around this way or adding a sharp as we go around this way. In our key of C, again, no sharps or flats. In the key of G, 1 sharp. In the key of D, 2 sharps. And if I were to play those scales in just linear fashion on this, because I can only play 1 note at a time like you, etc., etc. So, you know, that's how our music is structured, moving from one key to the next. And that tritone, it gives us what's called a leading tone to the. What happens is well, it's like the shu the ga of any chord is a half step below the sa of the next chord in this cycle of fourths. So if I went, and that takes us this leading tone, this half-step relationship. That's how we create what I like to think of as the gravity, the tonal gravity, to move from one key to the next. But in raga, that gravity stays within the raga, within the notes of the raga, and we feel that gravity very strongly. We feel that knee wants to rise up. We feel that. And of course, maga, you really feel that pull. I mean, these notes have, I've always thought of them, or not, I don't know about always, but I think of them as almost the planets in our solar system, how they hold each other there, but eventually, after several billion years, that gravity is going to pull them all together, and what keeps them spinning, but you feel that pull. It wants to go there. I think in reality it wants to go there. I think maybe over centuries of conditioning it also wants to go there. It's kind of pulling up to sa, but it's also pulling down to pancham. So I mean that's a lot of what we're working with. So, by fooling around and looking at these triads, I think you can get a lot of understanding about the structure of a scale. It's going to take you away from the execution of the raga, but it will give you some freedom within the, and you can look at wider intervals too. And we practice our scales in all intervals. So we like to look at those both stepwise and then bigger. Those are all fourths. Those are all fifths. And then, of course, thirds. And then, of course, we move outside the scale as well. We might do something, we might play true fourths around. That's not an Indian sound, but it's useful in jazz improvisation, and it's really useful. I think playing intervals is extremely helpful for intonation, which is something we all work with all of our lives because our instruments aren't perfect. As wind players, our breath, the shape of our mouth, the support we give, where the flute lies against our lip, we have to be listening and adjusting all the time. So, as I was saying, I do these. I practice all the intervals. Those are seconds, right? So I'm going up a whole step, down a half step, up a whole step. But really, I'm just thinking chromatically. I'm up a whole step. That's the next note. Then in minor thirds. Major thirds. And this you can do on your flutes. I mean, it's not as easy because you've got to find those half-holes, but it's really good to tune those intervals to each other. I mean, you know, your job is to tune to the drone, but you also want to really know what is that distance between every interval. And when they get wider, so then you can make up, you know, very esoteric lines, shall we say, dealing with intervals. I like to have some kind of melodic logic to what I'm doing. I write other things that are more, let's say, adventurous. Like I'm gonna. So one of the things, like I was saying, we play with tension and release. So I wrote a piece that it's essentially in C minor, but it plays some notes that are very far outside of the scale. Here. And I'll give you a taste of the tenor sax. This by the way is called soprano saxophone. This is called tenor saxophone. In between is the alto sax, which is probably the most common in old Bollywood films. It's a little smaller than this. These are in the key of B flat, so that means when I'm playing your Sa, which I call G, I'm actually playing F. And on the alto saxophone, when I'm playing what I call G, I'm actually playing B flat. Doesn't make any sense, but I've learned to make the mental adjustments. It's kind of done that way so that when music is written, most of it stays within the staff, so that you're not reading. But this reed, like you, by the way, my life is dictated by a small piece of cane. Unlike you, I have to throw these away like every couple of days. They don't last, and they suffer from changes in humidity a lot. So in my mind, I think, when I started composing this piece, and I did it a long time ago, ultimately the improvisational section, because I think composition and improvisation, which are mixed kind of the way they are in Indian classical music. In North Indian music, they're really pretty seamless. There's a little bit of melody, which then inspires the improvisation. The way I write, I tend to write somewhat longer compositions, like you heard that 15-beat piece goes around many cycles before it resolves. This one, as I said, the improvisation ultimately kind of comes down into a pat deep, but I mix a lot of, it's almost like like a mishra pat deep. I forgot it. So it actually resolves to the Shuddhaga. So that's pretty complicated by raga standards, but I think any of you, if you had a C flute and I gave you a recording of that and said go home and learn it, you could learn it because it all relates to Sa. The way the piece goes, the bass part is going. So you're back in Pat Deep there on knee. So when I'm just improvising, I stay in pot deep. And I even put like a little Lahara kind of gut in the middle. But then I have a bridge that changes and goes just a little bit outside. So that's another approach, taking something that's, because I like to straddle these two worlds of Indian classical music and Western composition, and I like to create music that's comfortable for a Western jazz musician to play and for an Indian artist to play. So most of my pieces have, even if they've got a place that would be awkward to play on the bansuri, it's usually got some place that would be comfortable to play on the bansuri. Like, as I said, that melody could be learned, but it could also, if I was playing with you, I could say, okay, I'll play that part. Then when we get to the pat deep, do what you want. And because the drone is, if you wanted to stick in Kirwani, it wouldn't be so bad. If you wanted to do something more like Bhairavi, that would be okay too. Where I'm like, that kind of works. Or you could even do like a you could. It's open enough that you could do like a little bit of a ragamala within that. But for me, that particular piece, I do like to hear that. Again, we've got that tritone relationship between in Patdeep, that tritone, that sharp 4, flat 5, Tivrama, exists between Ga and Shuddha, right? Those are very jazz-like intervals. The intervals are wide. Indian music, you generally don't jump big distances. It's pretty easy to do on the flute. It's not easy on the sitar, It's not that easy on the sarod. But if I asked you to go, or if we did it in D, so play Sa, everybody, Sa, como ga, Shuddha da, Sa, So, sa, ga, da, ga, sa. So, listen again. Da. So that's much more of a jazz musician's we'd call that like sort of an intervallic melody. We're not really playing a scale, we're kind of jumping around. And depending on what kind of rhythmic energy you put into it, it sounds like it can. We have this word swing, it's got a swing. In fact, they say it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. So that kind of thing's there, but it's not. It feels a little bit foreign to the Indian experience, but it's not really that far removed. I mean, it stays within a raga. It's just the feel is different. The groove is different. So let's see. So I said I sometimes write melodies from just listening to melody, sometimes from adding tensions, notes outside what in my mind is kind of the underlying raga. And then sometimes I try to do something that's very Indian. Like I had to do a concert at the end of last year with a bunch of classical artists, each one taking like a 2-minute segment, and like Hariharan was there, and Shujat Khan, and Kaushiki, and they asked me to write something in a 7-beat cycle. So because I like Charukeshi, and I knew I had to stay in D also, that was in D. So I came up with a little melody that went. So now, to me, that's, I don't really, I haven't had proper talim, so I don't know if that's really correct, but I know that it's close enough to work with the Indian musicians I've played it with. It fits comfortably into the sound of Charukeshi. It fits comfortably into the way I listen to Hariji break down. One of the very special things about your Guruji, and my Guruji too, is the way he plays these odd rhythm. We call them odd rhythm. Sevens, matatal, rupaktal, and japtal. The way the way he phrases those is kind of amazing and not easy to catch. I mean, because each time he plays it, it's going to vary slightly, and he plays with that rhythm and flows in it. So 7 is rarely going to be 7 plus 7. It's more likely going to be, maybe 9 plus 5 or 5 plus 9, and where the mukra starts is going to be kind of interesting. So I look for that. I look to that for inspiration when I'm creating a melody. I want it to be kind of interesting and elusive, and then also the way Hariji plays his T-highs, like my little T-high that ended that. It's not so regular. It doesn't start on 1, and one thing I love about the way Hariji plays is his T-highs. They come naturally out of the melodies. They're not forced. They're not like, okay, I'm going to wait, and here comes this beat, and now I'm going to play that T-high that I've been waiting to play, and maybe I'll make it, and maybe I won't. But it's more like, oh yeah, it just kind of comes naturally out of where the melody is going, and it flows in. And I know that that's only because he's spent so many hours of practicing that it becomes second nature. You don't get to that place just by luck. You look, and as I was going back to this idea of transcribing, when I listen to Hariji's performances, I'll catch a T-high and say, okay, wait, what is he doing there? And then I'll figure out what the formula is and hope then that it comes organically into my phrasing. Like when he's playing in 7, I know that there are places within the cycle that a T-high that you use in a 16-beat cycle is going to work, right? And now I don't know if he describes this clearly or if you're just does he do that? That's my question for you. Will Hariji describe? Okay, if you start on this matra, you can play this T-high. If you start on this matra, you have to play a different one. But usually you just have to catch it and then figure it out on your own. So, and that's good. I find when I figure it out on my own, I'm much more likely to, 1, retain it, and 2, find that it comes out in my own playing. Now, in the West, we have this written system of music. So if I'm working with an artist who's sending me these days an MP3 file through my email, they could conceivably send me a written chart, but I find if I learn it, and because I'm sort of visual, I tend to write things down. I don't know if you're comfortable writing in your system, but I find if I learn something and write it down, using the 2 systems help it stay in my memory. If I attach it, it's like if I attack it from both the hearing side, the writing side, then I see it visually, and I've spent enough time to slowly kind of write it down perfectly, I'm probably going to have a better job if I have to play it 5 years later. I'm going to be able to pull it out of my memory a little bit more clearly. Do you want to ask any questions? Do you have any questions you want to ask at this point?
How you create melody in this jazz music?
How do I create melody?
Melody. This is 3 what we learned today. This is the basic chords, and these are the combination of different chords.
How do you create melody with it?
What is the thought process to create melody? Because in our Indian music, we are having fixed notes, like in Bhupali, we are having five notes, sa re ga pa dha sa. So what is the thought process while you are playing, or you are playing some fusion kind of music?
Well, I think people approach it in different ways. As a composer, most of what I do comes from my imagination. I don't generally come in to a composition looking to do something. I mean, a lot of it comes from either improvising at the keyboard, practicing the saxophone, and then I hear something that intrigues me. I think some people look for, I mean, within any kind of scale or chord, you have the notes that feel like they're at rest, and then you have the notes that feel like they create tension, okay? That they're unsettled where they're sitting. So you want to, I think, look for a balance between creating tension and creating, well, release from that tension or an area of rest. So yeah, it's hard to say. And you want to balance that, of course, with rhythm. So I often think in time cycles, okay? And sort of similar to what we were just playing, I wrote a piece once that I like very much. It's in a slow 15-beat cycle. And the melody's very simple. I think I heard the opening melody. It just kind of came to me, and it goes. Okay, that's the opening phrase. And it's like da da dee dong da da dong dong da dee da. So that's like 7.5. Da 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 ding. So if you were counting fast though in 15, ba ba da dong da da dong dong da dee 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 dong da da dong dong da dee dee. Okay, so that's very simple melody. Sa re ga. I mean ga re sa. So slight variation, and it just feels to me like this circle. It's 15, which is an odd. I mean, it's not a tala that we play in very often, but when I play the melody, you don't feel like, oh, this is odd. It just kind of breathes around this circle, and I call the piece waltz because in many ways it's 3 5s. You could look at it as a very slow piece in 3 where each thing is divided into 5. But then the melody evolves. So I'm not sure I really know how to put in words how that comes about. You know, as I'm playing it now, I'm sort of analyzing it. So I've got simple stepwise motion. I mean, melodies are created of skips and steps, really. You're either going or you're going. So you're either stepping from one note to the next or you're jumping around. You want to vary the rhythm. You want to keep rhythmic interest in your melody. I like most of my melodies. I like them to be singable. Like that melody would catch in your ear. I think you could hum it after you heard it. You might leave here going la dee dee dee, and, you know, and maybe you'll make it in 4 rather than 5. But Other questions?
So in Indian classical music, we have some rules like in Yaman, we can't go Sarigama Padhani Sa Sandhama. Is there any rules in jazz music too?
There aren't rules. I mean, but there, I mean, in Western, in jazz, the rules to some extent are made to be broken, we like to say, but there, I mean, harmony, we have a lot of relationships between chords and scales, but we're, like if I'm playing, this is called a C7 chord, and if I were to play the basic scale, again, it would be this Kamaj scale. 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 5, 3, 1. That's the chord, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. That's the basic scale. But then we have what are called alterations. So that's a regular re, but the como re goes in there. We call that a sharp re, even though it's a como ga. I mean a shud ga. But because a como ga. But because we have the shud ga on the bottom, if we have the flat ga on top, we call it a sharp 9. So depending on where that dominant chord is leaving, we make all these alterations. And these are choices that we make. There are no actual wrong choices unless it sounds bad. And a lot of times people say the chord, 1, 3, 5, and 7, sa, ga, pa, and ni, those are what we call chord tones. The way jazz is taught today, people will say, well, if we've got the downbeat and the upbeat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, people will say things like, well, you should be landing on a chord tone on the downbeat and playing the other ones on the upbeat. And, that's probably okay for practicing, but if you hear a melody and you believe in that melody and you're improvising, I think you can really make it work. Just like that little Pat Deep thing I showed. There's no real reason why that's right, except that I heard the melody, I believed it, and I've played it enough time that it exists. It's like we're allowed to create stuff. Nobody says to us we have to go. Right, that's Yemen. Nobody in America is going to be upset if you play. We call that a Lydian mode. Nobody's going to be upset there. There are no set rules for how a scale can be played. Other than that, it has to sound good. Raga is much more specific because each raga, being developed over hundreds of years, has a certain color, a certain theme, a certain rasa that it's supposed to express, and it's an amazing system. So you really want to be true to that. But for somebody like me, I mean, when I play with, in fact, I told Hariji this story. We did a concert. I told this to him on Sunday, and of course he doesn't remember it. But we did a concert with him in Kansas City a long time ago with my bass player Kai Eckhart, who's a fantastic musician. He's played a lot with Trilok Gurtu and with Zakirbai and all sorts of musicians. And we were playing a composition in Hansadwani, which, as I mentioned, is extremely restrictive for your average jazz musician. And it came time for the bass player's solo, and he's playing, but a jazz musician's ear will almost always lead him when they're playing in a major. They hear that tivra ma as an exciting alternative to what's happening. And, Hariji's just sitting there, and Kai is playing his solo, and suddenly he's just inspired and goes, plays that tivra ma, and Hari just turns slightly and raises one eyebrow. But for Kai, it was like he went, and this may be 12, 15 years ago, and still, whenever Kai hears that scale, he's like, oh yes, I remember when he just kind of looked at me in one eyebrow. Because he knows Kai's not an Indian classical musician, but everything's happening within these 5 notes, and then, and he played it very musically, and nobody in a jazz world would think twice of it. But and if Shivji did it, it'd be okay, because he could do a ragmala, and it would be accepted as such, as opposed to, why are you playing tivra ma in? So, yes, so we don't have those rules. But we have rules of harmony. And again, we believe rules are made to be broken. We know that this chord goes here. 5, 1. But we also know that you could substitute it with going from Komal Re down to Sa instead of going from Pa to Sa. And if I told a piano player, go from G to C, the piano player would probably, in a jazz setting, feel comfortable going from D flat to C, unless I were to say, no, I really want you to stay strictly within a certain color. So the rules tend to be made by the composers rather than by the scale. Other question? Oh, sorry.
Is it possible to learn jazz with any depth on the bansuri, or is it better to take a Western instrument?
I think you can learn a lot about jazz on the bansuri. There will be challenges, but I see more and more people doing it. It's not an instrument that lends itself to rapid chromatic movements, but you can express, I don't know if you've, Ronu Majumdar, he's learned a lot of, non-Indian things on his instrument, whether it's been some Western classical things, some Bach and things like that. But I think the main key to learning jazz is not so much the instrument as spending time listening to it. I think you can't learn any music without listening to it. And that's, when people here ask me, keyboard players, they say, oh, I play jazz. I'm like, well, have you listened to, like, for me to learn Indian music, I listen to Badi Ghulam Ali Khan, I listen to Karim Khan, I listen to Nikhil Bam.
Does it have any relation with the diminished chord or diminished?
Yes. If I add a note in there, this is a diminished chord. What he's asking about is a diminished triad. Diminished chord, like I was saying, the augmented triad is, okay, the major triad is a major third plus a minor third. The augmented triad is a major third plus a major third. The diminished triad is a minor third plus a minor third, sounding like this. Sa, ga. And from that we get, we can play a... So those are all diminished chords, and they're symmetrical the way an augmented chord is. And when we go up major scales, there is a way to go chord tones, diminished chord, chord tones, diminished chords, chord tone, diminished chord. So that's one way we do this harmonization of a major scale. But that's getting, I mean, that's a little more advanced for now, but it's a good thing to look at. Again, it's like this. And that's a really a pianistic technique, and also writing for groups of horn players. But those are what we call passing tones.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot, George. This was a wonderful session. I know it's getting close to lunchtime, so I won't take much time. It'll be nice to kind of end this whole session with a little bit of music. I think we'll all like to leave with lingering sounds of maybe the bansuri and your playing, maybe a little bit of a jam. It would be a nice way. Okay. Somewhere where you pick up where they drop, or vice versa. Somewhere we just kind of end a little musically, as opposed to a lot of verbosity.
All right, let's play that Rupaktal Charukeshi together. So the melody is. Okay, so it's in a 7-beat cycle. You should be going 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Second part. Sorry. Five, 6, 7. Here, okay, let me simplify that. Second part. Okay, so that T high is. Starting on knee. And so it starts on beat 2 if we're going din din na din na din na ah taka dimi taka taka dimi taka ta taka ta taka dimi taka taka dimi taka de taka taka dimi taka taka dimi taka de taka 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay, so if you're playing Rupa Tal, it's actually it's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1 2. Next part. Then there's another. So that second part goes 5, 6, 7. Two. And then there's a difficult fast teen tal that goes. Two, three. Actually, you could all play this part. Goes. Hold on. Before you play it, you should get this part also. Just that much. Listen. Two parts. So listen. It's the first part. Ga ga ni. Sorry, ga ga sa ni ni. Ma ga ga sa ni ni ma da. Listen one time. Listen. Yeah. Yeah, listen carefully. And make the note short. You're playing, this is like kind of a percussive accompaniment part. Good. You keep playing that. Improvise. So the key in something like this is simply to fill in that gap where we're going bum bum boom beep beep boom bum bum boom bum ba da da dun 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 dun. Improvise, improvise, improvise. Beep beep boom beep beep boom boom. For now, I mean that's keeping that, and then the melody is very tricky, but it's a melody that any one of you in here could learn because it stays within the so it stays comfortably within the Charukeshi mode, but it's structured in a way that's different from the way you would play a gut. But so